The gunshot echoed across the plains as Eliza Jenkins ducked behind the overturned wagon, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't how she'd imagined her journey to Arizona Territory would end, trapped between a band of outlaws and the relentless desert sun of 1878. Just 3 days shy of reaching Tucson, the stagecoach had been ambushed, the driver killed, and now she was the only passenger left alive. "You can't hide forever, miss," one of the bandits called out. "We just want those pretty jewels of yours and maybe a little company." Eliza clutched her father's pocket, watched the only valuable she possessed, and closed her eyes. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her press harder against the wagon's wooden frame, expecting more outlaws. Instead, gunfire erupted from a different direction. The outlaws shouted in confusion, and the thunder of retreating horses told her they were fleeing. "You can come out now," a deep voice called after the gunfire ceased. "They're gone." Cautiously, Eliza peered around the wagon. A tall man sat atop a chestnut stallion, rifle still in hand, scanning the horizon to ensure the bandits were truly gone. His face was partially obscured by the shadow of his hat, but she could see the hard set of his jaw beneath several days' growth of beard. "Thank you," she managed, her throat dry from fear and the desert heat. The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion. "You're a long way from anywhere, madam." His eyes finally met hers, a startling blue against his sun-darkened skin. "I was bound for Tucson," Eliza explained, standing on shaky legs. "My uncle has a boarding house there." He nodded once, then gestured to the bodies of the stage driver and guard. "We should bury them proper before moving on." "You'll help me reach Tucson?" Hope surged through her. "Can't leave you out here to die," he replied simply. "Name's Knox Thompson." "Eliza Jenkins," she offered, extending her hand. He looked at it for a long moment before giving it the briefest of shakes. His hand was calloused but warm. "I'm headed to the Triple R Ranch near Tucson myself. I can drop you at your uncle's place on the way." As Knox dug graves for the fallen men, Eliza gathered what supplies remained from the stagecoach. She watched his methodical movements, the strength in his shoulders as he worked tirelessly under the brutal sun. "Have you been in Arizona Territory long, Mr. Thompson?" she asked, handing him a canteen of water. He took a long drink before answering. "Long enough to know it's no place for a woman alone." His eyes swept over her city dress and impractical boots. "Especially one who looks like she's never seen a day outside of Boston." "Philadelphia, actually," Eliza corrected with a hint of defiance, "and I'm tougher than I appear." The ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You'd better be." After a simple prayer over the graves, Knox helped Eliza gather her remaining belongings and secured them to his horse. "You'll have to ride with me," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Midnight can handle us both." The intimacy of sharing a saddle with a stranger wasn't lost on Eliza, but she had little choice. Knox mounted first, then reached down to pull her up behind him. "Hold on," he instructed gruffly. Eliza hesitantly placed her hands on his waist, feeling the solid muscle beneath his worn shirt. As they set off across the open desert, she found herself drawing closer, the rhythm of the horse bringing them into an unwilling proximity. They made camp that night beneath a small outcropping of rock. Knox built a fire with practiced efficiency and prepared a simple meal of beans and jerky from his provisions. "What brings you to Tucson?" he asked as they ate. Eliza stared into the flames. "My parents died last winter. Influenza. My uncle is my only remaining family." Knox nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Sorry to hear that. And you, what awaits you at Triple R Ranch?" "A job," he replied. "I'm good with horses. Break the wild ones nobody else can handle." "You tame them," a shadow crossed his face. "I understand them." Wild things aren't meant to be tamed, just partnered with. They fell silent, the crackling of the fire and the distant howl of coyotes the only sounds in the vast darkness. Eliza studied Knox's profile in the firelight, the hard lines of a man who'd lived rough years. "Get some sleep," he finally said. "We've got a long ride tomorrow." Eliza awoke before dawn to find Knox already up, saddling the horse. The efficiency of his movement spoke of years on the trail. There was something mesmerizing about watching his hands work, strong, capable hands that had saved her life. "Good morning," she said, rising to her feet. He glanced over. "Morning. Coffee's hot if you want some." The day's ride was long and grueling. The sun beat down mercilessly, and Eliza found herself leaning more heavily against Knox's back, drawing strength from his unwavering posture. By midday, they stopped at a small stream to water the horse and rest. Eliza splashed cool water on her face, grateful for the respite. When she looked up, she caught Knox watching her, an unreadable expression in his eyes. He quickly turned away. "How much farther to Tucson?" she asked. "Another day and a half if we push hard." She nodded, trying not to show her disappointment at how soon their journey would end. There was something compelling about this silent, stoic man who had come to her rescue, like a figure from a dime novel. That evening, as they made camp in the shelter of a canyon wall, a distant rumble of thunder warned of an approaching storm. "We should find better cover," Knox said, eyeing the darkening sky. "Flash floods in these parts can be deadly." He led them to a shallow cave in the canyon wall just as the first heavy raindrops began to fall. The storm hit with sudden fury, sheets of rain obscuring the landscape beyond the cave's entrance. Trapped in closer quarters, Eliza became acutely aware of Knox's presence. He sat near the entrance, watching the storm, his profile illuminated by occasional flashes of lightning. "Have you always been a horseman?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Since I could walk," he answered. "My pa had a small ranch in Texas, learned everything from him until he died in the war." "I'm sorry," Knox shrugged. "Long time ago now, and your mother remarried." "Lives in Denver with her banker husband." His tone held no bitterness, just simple acceptance. "Haven't seen her in years." "No family of your own?" Eliza ventured. He turned to look at her then, his eyes reflecting the lightning outside. "No, never saw the need. For family. For getting attached to anything that can be taken away." The raw honesty in his voice stirred something in Eliza. "That's a lonely way to live, Mr. Thompson." "It's a safe way to live," he countered. "Out here, attachments are liabilities." "Or they're what make life worth living," she challenged softly. Knox didn't respond, but something shifted in his expression. He turned back to the storm, but Eliza sensed he was still listening, still considering her words. The next morning dawned clear, the desert washed clean by the storm. As they rode, Eliza noticed Knox was less rigid beneath her hands, occasionally pointing out landmarks or naming distant mountain ranges. Small offerings of conversation that she treasured. By midday, they encountered another rider, a weathered man with a gray mustache who introduced himself as Hank, foreman of the Triple R. "Knox Thompson," Hank exclaimed. "We weren't expecting you for another week." His eyes shifted curiously to Eliza. "Ran into some trouble," Knox explained briefly. "Miss Jenkins was on a stagecoach that got ambushed. I'm seeing her safely to her uncle's in Tucson." "Well, you're only about 4 hours from town now," Hank said. "I was headed that way myself to pick up supplies." "Happy to escort the lady if you want to head on to the ranch." Knox hesitated, and Eliza felt her heart sink at the thought of parting so soon. To her surprise, Knox shook his head. "I gave my word I'd see her to her uncle's door," he said firmly. "I'll be along to the ranch tomorrow." Hank nodded, a knowing smile beneath his mustache. "Suit yourself. I'll tell the boss you'll be a day late." As they continued toward Tucson, Eliza found herself searching for ways to extend their journey, to hold on to these moments with a man who'd begun as a stranger but now felt impossibly important. "Your friend seemed surprised you'd delay your arrival for me," she commented. Knox adjusted his hat. "A man's word should mean something." "Is that all it is? Your word?" He didn't answer immediately, and when he did, his voice was quieter. "No, not all." Those three simple words sent a flutter through Eliza's chest that had nothing to do with the rocking motion of the horse. Tucson appeared on the horizon late that afternoon, a dusty collection of buildings shimmering in the heat. Eliza gave directions to her uncle's boarding house on the town's eastern edge, each instruction bringing them closer to their inevitable parting. The boarding house was a two-story adobe structure with a wide porch. As they approached, a man who could only be her uncle emerged, his face lighting with recognition. "Eliza, thank God," he rushed down the steps. "We heard about the stage being ambushed. I feared the worst." Knox helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. She turned to face him, suddenly at a loss for words. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I wouldn't have survived without you." He nodded, his eyes holding hers. "You're safe now, and you'll go to your ranch." "At first light tomorrow." He glanced at the setting sun. "Need to find a place for the night." Eliza's uncle stepped forward. "Nonsense. You saved my niece's life. You'll stay here as my guest. I insist." Knox looked ready to refuse, but something in Eliza's expression made him reconsider. "Much obliged, sir." That evening, after Eliza had bathed and changed into clean clothes borrowed from her aunt, she found Knox alone on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the desert sky. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said, joining him at the railing. "Different from back east, I imagine." "Everything is different here." Eliza turned to face him. "Including me, I think." Knox studied her. "How so?" "In Philadelphia, I was always exactly what was expected, the proper daughter, the dutiful niece. Out here." She gestured to the vast landscape beyond the town. "Out here, I feel like I could become someone true to myself." "And who might that be?" Eliza smiled. "I'm not certain yet, but I look forward to discovering her." A comfortable silence fell between them until Knox finally spoke. "I should thank you." "For what?" "Reminding me there's more to life than just surviving it." The simple admission touched Eliza deeply. "Will you come back to Tucson?" she asked, unable to hide the hope in her voice. "The ranch is only half a day's ride," he replied. "I could check on you, make sure you're settling in all right." "I'd like that very much." In the soft glow of the porch lantern, something unspoken passed between them, a connection neither had anticipated but both now acknowledged. True to his word, Knox departed at dawn the next morning, but not before promising to return in a week's time. Eliza watched him ride away, already counting the days until she would see him again. The week passed slowly as Eliza adjusted to life in Tucson. She helped her aunt with the boarding house, met the regular boarders, mostly miners and cattlemen, and began to learn the rhythms of the frontier town. But always, her thoughts returned to Knox Thompson. When Saturday arrived, Eliza found herself watching the road from town, her heart leaping at every approaching rider. It was nearly sunset when she spotted the familiar figure on his chestnut horse. Knox had bathed and shaved, his strong jaw now visible beneath the shadow of his hat. He'd even donned a clean shirt, though he looked somewhat uncomfortable in it, like a wild creature in unfamiliar surroundings. "Miss Jenkins," he greeted her, dismounting. "Mr. Thompson," she returned, unable to contain her smile. "You came back. Said I would." His eyes softened as they took her in. "How are you finding Tucson?" Growing fond of it, she admitted, though I've yet to see much beyond the boarding house. I could show you around tomorrow if you'd like. There's a church social after the service. The invitation surprised and delighted her. I'd be honored. That evening, Knox joined the family for dinner, answering her uncle's questions about the Triple R Ranch and listening attentively to her aunt's stories of early Tucson. Eliza watched him throughout the meal, noting how he carefully held his fork the way her aunt did, how he waited for everyone to be served before beginning. Small gestures that revealed his desire to fit into her world. The next day, Knox arrived in a wagon rather than on horseback, explaining that he thought it might be more comfortable for her. They attended the simple church service together, sitting side by side in the wooden pew, their shoulders occasionally brushing. Afterwards, at the social, Knox stood somewhat awkwardly at the edge of the gathering until Eliza took his arm and introduced him to the townspeople she'd met. "You seem uncomfortable," she observed as they stepped away from a group of chattering women. "Not used to so many people," he admitted. "Or being introduced as a hero. But you are. You saved my life," he shook his head. "I did what anyone would do." "No," Eliza said firmly, "not anyone. You." Their eyes met, and for a moment Eliza thought he might say something more. Instead, he offered his arm again. "Would you like to see the rest of Tucson?" He drove her through the growing town, pointing out landmarks: the courthouse, the mercantile, the saloon he advised her to avoid, and finally, a small hill overlooking the settlement. "Best view in the territory," Knox said as he helped her from the wagon. They stood together, taking in the panorama of desert and mountains beyond the cluster of buildings that was Tucson. "It's magnificent," Eliza breathed. "Worth fighting for," Knox agreed. "Worth living for." Something in his tone made her look at him. "You sound like you found something here." "Maybe I have." His eyes held hers, and for the first time since she'd met him, Knox Thompson looked uncertain. In the weeks that followed, Knox made the ride from the Triple R to Tucson every Saturday without fail. Sometimes they attended town events. Other times they simply rode out to explore the surrounding countryside. Eliza learned that beneath his taciturn exterior was a man of deep thought and surprising gentleness. He taught her to ride properly, to read the weather from the clouds, to spot the hidden beauty in the harsh landscape. And Eliza found herself falling in love with both the territory and the man who was showing it to her. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the boarding house porch watching a spectacular sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson, Eliza gathered her courage. "Knox," she began, "may I ask you something personal?" He nodded, his eyes still on the horizon. "Have you ever been in love?" The question hung between them for several heartbeats before he answered. "Once. Long time ago. What happened? War happened. I came back different." "She married someone else." His voice held no bitterness, just a matter-of-fact acceptance that made Eliza's heart ache for him, and since then, Knox finally looked at her. "Haven't let myself get close enough to find out." "Why not?" "Told myself I didn't need it, that kind of attachment. It makes a man vulnerable." "All the best things in life involve some vulnerability," Eliza said softly. "Maybe." His gaze was intense now, searching. "What about you? You ever been in love?" Eliza Jenkins, her heart hammered in her chest. "I am now." The simple declaration hung in the air between them. Knox's expression shifted, something raw and hopeful breaking through his carefully maintained reserve. "Eliza," the boarding house door opened, and her aunt stepped out. "Eliza, dear, could you help me with the evening meal?" The moment broken, Eliza rose. "Of course, Aunt Martha." Knox stood as well. "I should be getting back to the ranch before dark." "Will you come again next Saturday?" Eliza asked, unable to keep the hope from her voice. He nodded, his eyes conveying what he couldn't say aloud. I'll be here." But the following Saturday, Knox didn't come. Nor the next. 2 weeks of watching the road left Eliza sick with worry and heartache. Had her confession frightened him away? Had he decided that whatever was growing between them wasn't worth the risk? On the third Saturday, just as Eliza was losing hope, Hank from the Triple R rode up to the boarding house. "Miss Jenkins," he greeted her, removing his hat. "Knox asked me to come." Fear clutched at her heart. "Is he all right?" "Took a bad fall breaking a new stallion," Hank explained. "Broke his leg and 2 ribs. He's laid up at the ranch and driving everyone crazy with his foul mood." The older man smiled kindly. "He's asking for you if you're willing to come." Relief flooded through her, followed by determination. "Let me speak with my uncle." An hour later, with her uncle's blessing and her aunt's basket of medicinal supplies, Eliza was in Hank's wagon headed for the Triple R ranch. The journey gave her time to think, to consider what she wanted to say to Knox. By the time they arrived at the sprawling ranch house, she knew exactly what was in her heart. Hank led her to a room at the back of the house. "Fair warning, miss, he's not been the best patient." When she entered, Knox was propped up in bed, his leg in a splint, his face drawn with pain and frustration. The moment he saw her, his expression transformed. "Eliza," he breathed, as though her name itself was a relief. "You missed our Saturday," she said, setting down her aunt's basket and moving to his bedside. "I'm sorry." His eyes never left her face. "Thought about sending word sooner, but—" "But what?" Knox gestured to his broken body. "Look at me. What kind of future could I offer you like this? I can't even get out of this damn bed." "Is that what you think I care about?" Eliza asked, taking his hand in hers. "Your ability to ride or work? Do you think so little of what's between us?" His fingers tightened around hers. "I think the world of what's between us. That's why I couldn't bear the thought of you tied to a man who couldn't provide for you properly." "The doctor says you'll heal," she countered. "This is temporary. And if it wasn't, if I was permanently crippled, I'd still be here." The certainty in her voice was absolute. "I love you, Knox Thompson. Not your abilities or your strength, though I admire both. I love the man who stops to help strangers in the desert, who keeps his word above all else, who sees beauty in this harsh land and helped me see it too." Knox's expression was one of wonder and disbelief. "I've spent years convincing myself I didn't need love, that it was safer to keep my distance." "And what do you think now?" Eliza asked, her heart in her throat. A slow smile spread across his face, not the ghostly hint she'd first seen in the desert, but a full, transformative smile that reached his eyes. "I think I've been a damn fool." Eliza leaned closer. "Then let me be clear. I love you and I'm going to keep loving you whether you think you need it or not." "The cowboy told her he didn't need love," Knox murmured, reaching up to touch her cheek. She smiled. "Then you don't mind if I give it anyway?" "I don't mind at all," Eliza whispered back. "In fact, I insist." Their first kiss was gentle, mindful of his injuries, but filled with the promise of all that was to come. In the months that followed, as Knox healed, Eliza divided her time between the boarding house and the Triple R. She learned the workings of the ranch, made friends with the cowhands, and discovered a natural affinity for the horses Knox so loved. By the time winter came to the territory, bringing cooler days and crystal-clear nights, Knox was back on his feet with a slight limp that the doctor assured would eventually fade. On Christmas Eve, with a dusting of rare snow on the desert beyond the windows, Knox took Eliza for a short walk beneath the stars. Despite the cold, he seemed determined to show her something. They stopped at a small rise overlooking the main house and outbuildings of the Triple R. "The boss has asked me to take over as foreman," Knox told her. "Hank's retiring come spring." "That's wonderful news," Eliza said, genuinely pleased. "You've more than earned it. There's more." Knox pointed to a cleared area not far from the main house. "See that patch of land there? The boss says I can build my own place. A home." The word hung in the air, weighted with meaning. Knox turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I never thought I'd want this," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "A home, a future, someone to share it all with. I told myself I didn't need love." He shook his head in wonder. "Then you came along with your Philadelphia manners and your unfailing courage and your determination to love me anyway." Eliza felt tears gathering in her eyes as Knox lowered himself carefully to one knee, wincing slightly from his still healing leg. "Eliza Jenkins, I was wrong. I need love. I need your love specifically for the rest of my days." He pulled a small ring from his pocket, a simple silver band with a turquoise stone. "Will you marry me and build a life here under these stars?" "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes." Knox slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to pull her into his arms. Their kiss was a promise, a celebration, and a beginning. They were married in the spring of 1879, in the small Tucson church where they'd attended their first social together. The whole town turned out, along with the entire crew of the Triple R. Eliza's aunt wept joyfully, and her uncle gave her away with pride shining in his eyes. By summer, their small house on the Triple R land was complete, a sturdy adobe with a wide porch where they could watch the sunsets together. Knox's work as foreman kept him busy, but he always found time to ride with Eliza in the evenings, showing her new wonders in the landscape she had come to love as deeply as she loved him. On their first anniversary, as they sat on their porch watching the stars emerge, Knox pulled Eliza close. "Any regrets?" he asked. "About leaving city life behind for a cowboy and a dusty ranch?" Eliza looked up at the man who had saved her life that day in the desert and had been saving it in different ways ever since. "Not a single one," she answered truthfully. "This is exactly where I'm meant to be. With a man who once claimed he didn't need love," she smiled, pressing a kiss to his jaw. "With a man who learned to accept it anyway." As the years passed, the Triple R prospered under Knox's management. Eliza became known throughout the territory for her skill with horses and her boarding house hospitality whenever ranchers' wives came to visit. Their home expanded to accommodate first one child, then another, a son with Knox's blue eyes and a daughter with Eliza's determined spirit. And each night, no matter how busy the day had been, they would find their way to each other, to the love that had begun with a rescue in the desert and grown into a life neither could have imagined alone. In moments of reflection, Knox would sometimes marvel at how close he had come to missing it all, how his fear of vulnerability had nearly cost him everything that made life worth living. And Eliza would remind him, as she always did, that love finds a way, especially when offered freely, without expectation, to a heart that didn't even know it was waiting to be filled.